So I was giving a talk just the other day about the zodiac wheel and its purpose in our lives and why the powers that be may have withheld that information from us in the conventional institutions of school and church, in our culture, civilization of the West. And we dealt with, of course, the subjects of the equinoxes and the solstices, which form the cardinal grand cross of the zodiac wheel itself. This is where we get the sign of the cross as it matches up with great religious symbols throughout history. That cardinal grand cross is right there in the zodiac wheel. And the solstice, one of which is coming up very soon, we are doing a sound healing ceremony at our mudra this coming weekend, which is the winter solstice, coming up at the end of this year, which we're very excited about. And what is the power of this time? What is the significance of it? We're going to deal with that a little bit at the ceremony. Of course, this may be kindergarten for some, but solstice is sol is the sun, and stis is stillness, right? Stillness of the sun standing still. So what on earth is that? Well, we know that the sun travels in that circle and does its thing. It moves. In terms of our interpretation of it, we don't have to go into the cosmology. That's a rabbit hole that we simply don't have time to go into and stay on track metaphysically the way that we wish to. However, in an energetic sense and in a very real sense, during the solstices, both summer and winter, both summer and winter, June 21st, and upcoming winter, December 21st, the sun rises up to in the lowest degree of the perihelion on December 21st. Rises up into the lowest degree of perihelion in so-called tropical northern hemisphere astrology. It does that for 3 days straight. During the solstice, it rises up at the same degree. And not until the third day, if you will, takes 1 degree up and rises again on what we call in the West Christmas Day. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? That's a story that sounds very similar to something I heard as a child in church about Easter, right? Interesting how all that matches up in a very strange way, but a very obvious one, right? And so there's this, call it, if you want, an ominous time where the sun rises up for 3 days straight at the same spot. It doesn't really move until the third/4th day rises again and continues its way up through the season of winter. In the energy of Rome that we've been in for the last 2,000 years or more, in this Gregorian calendar that we're living in, they've taken a 360-degree wheel, perfect 360-degree zodiac wheel of the firmament of the universe, with 2 pit stops in it, where it holds still 3 days or so. And they turned it into this weird 365-day calendar with this weird leap year thing to make up for the sun standing still at the 2 solstices. And perhaps another kind of calendar would be better. One where we simply pause at that day. We get to that day and we call it Solstice Day for 3 days. And then we change number on the next day. And then we stay 360 degrees. And we're more in line with nature. Maybe it's the moon calendar. 28 days, isn't it? It's pretty symmetrical. Isn't a week 7 days? 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times 2 is 14. There's your new moon and your full moon. The Roman Gregorian calendar throws this off. This is something I'm going to touch on also at our gathering on the solstice coming up at the Mudra. A little deeper understanding of what's happening during this time. Why it is so ominous, the shortest days of the year, right? In the northern hemisphere. I told my group the other night at my astrology lecture that I am passionate about that subject because I know that we should have been taught it in school and we weren't. We should have been taught it in church and we weren't. There is a reason for that. When we go into the energies of the Saturnian structures of the world, we see that there's a force behind that which is intentional. The power structures of the world were not designed to lead us into knowledge and a personal relationship with the divinity and Mama Earth. No, they were designed to be a barrier between us and that. And the church gave us that. The school gave us that. And therefore, the school and the church did not teach astrology, did they? I would say 90% or more of them did not. Of course they did not. And therefore, those of us who have a proclivity to raise an eyebrow about things around us in the world, we are inspired to take a hard look at that and see, well, maybe there's a reason that they didn't show us that and didn't teach us that as children in normal, conventional circumstances in the West. More and more people are growing their raise eyebrow proclivities in life, are they not? And those who are, perhaps, should begin to take a harder look at astrology, those who are not yet doing so, because it is the one subject, it is one of the subjects, the big, important subjects of life that was completely left out of mainstream, conventional institutions of the world. It was pushed out and left to the so-called gypsies and the travelers and the freaks and the hippies and the new agers in the modern world. The church said, no, this is of the devil. Astrology is of the devil. We leave that alone. Kundalini is of the devil. Yoga is of the devil. We hear this in church circles now. I live in an area of the country filled with people who might think that about a yoga practice, about an astrology study. And yet those who know me to be a human being of great integrity and discipline and a God-seeking, God-fearing human being. And sometimes they come into conflict in their mind about that because they look at my spiritual practice and it's not something they ever learned about in school and in their family life and in their culture. This is not their fault. This is why yoga centers like mine exist. When we understand the spiritual power of the solstices and the equinoxes, just like any other aspect of the astrological power of our lives and the world and the universe. As I told my audience the other night, the main reason for God giving us this language that is right above our heads, the main reason is for each of us to know ourselves. It is not to draw up a chart and give it to another person to read it. Of course, this is valuable, very valuable. There's nothing wrong with that. But God wants us to know the language ourselves so he can have a direct relationship with us. And it is the universal language which shows up in all of the scriptures of all the traditions, and therefore must be taken seriously and taking a harder look at from all of those traditions, perhaps. It is underlying all of them. The church didn't tell us this in the West. Simply did not. And so, therefore, in the West, those of us yogis are going to work extra hard to make such esoteric themes and subjects part of people's lives so they can develop their own relationship with God. The river is quite full from some hard rain, thunderstorms, unbelievable, beautiful scenery around here. And strangely, not freezing cold in the overcast, considering how chilly it has been. Strange day, perhaps, late December and in the 50s, overcast and humid.